recently in an interview in a Japanese newspaper, Sony believes that interoperability itself is not a differentiator. It's basically the cost of entry to get into the home network. It makes no sense, actually many companies, including Sony, have introduced proprietary interface technologies to make their cluster of devices interoperate or work together in some kind of systems level perspective. But as proprietary interfaces go, it's not effective for the consumers because the consumers want choice. They want to be able to go to the store and buy the products that they see that are attractive to them, bring them home, and have those products operate as part of the home system easily. And proprietary interfaces don't accomplish that. Instead, open industry standards accomplish that. We have a lot to do to build a usable, interoperable home network. There's no doubt about that. DLNA recently introduced some expanded guidelines earlier this month that focus on not only servers and players such as digital televisions, but also printers and mobile devices and a host of other devices. So I think the DLNA efforts and Sony's investment in that is paying off. Companies can come and make products that interoperate. You can make a printer, for instance, that works with a Sony TV without having to work closely with Sony or get into the Sony R&D labs or have some kind of special agreement. Instead, you focus on the DLNA, a neutral, standalone industry organization to get your certification, do your plug fests, and introduce your product with a consumer-focused logo. This year, DLNA will be taking the logo to the consumer and promoting it as the platform of interoperability. So establishing a platform of interoperability and getting these first home network devices into the market is very important. And I think I've heard talk about ubiquitous networks, getting everybody connected to the internet, and so on. What's missing is if I have an internet connection at my home, that's nice, but what does that do for me? DLNA takes that one step further so that the ubiquity of the network extends not only to the walls of your house, but also to the products within your home. And I think Claudia made a good point. When we achieve that, everybody wins. Sony wins when everything is digital coming over a home network from the infrastructure, because an ecosystem will have been created whereby companies can compete based on the way they compete best, the way Sony competes best: product quality, image quality, price in some cases, and so on. But first we have to get the platform of interoperability. We're not quite there yet. I see the clouds, but I think that the skies, rather than say that there is a cloud or a dark cloud, I think we'd see broken skies. And I think I have optimism that we're turning the corner, but whether that means 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. But I do think that we're finally focusing on the right things as the multiple industries to come together and create this platform of interoperability based on open standards. Once we have such a platform, we have an ongoing responsibility to manage the evolution of that platform. New technologies will always come to be, and any platform that's created has to accommodate those new technologies to provide a better user experience. Higher bandwidth wireless, for example, better compression techniques, better storage technologies, removable storage such as Blu-ray, and so on. These technologies have to be incorporated into the interoperable network over the course of time. So, so we have a collective responsibility to deliver compelling value propositions to the consumers. And I like your comment about geeks. I was once a geek. Some may think I still am. But I had this vision of, isn't this stuff cool? And I was one of the original subscribers to CompuServe, for example, with a 300 baud modem. And I thought that was really neat, but it's really not usable. It's not a value proposition that the average consumer can buy into. And when I say average consumer, I speak with nothing but the utmost respect, because I've evolved now to the point where I consider myself an average consumer. I have an ability to understand things to some technical depth, but fundamentally, when I go into a retail outlet and buy a product, I just want to hook the damn thing up and have it work. I don't really want to expend my professional expertise to make it work or to program the remote control or anything of that nature. So I'm not talking about Joe's six-pack. I'm talking about all of us, actually, and our families, and so on. My wife still doesn't know how to turn on our entertainment center in the house. My 8-year-old son has to help her. That's true, actually. She literally doesn't know how to turn on the TV. So we need to have the consumers going to retail stores. We need to have consumers have confidence based on experience, a track record of positive experiences, that they understand what the products do, and they have some confidence that when they bring them home, they'll be able to get them to work without taking a Saturday off and making sure that the kids are out of the house because of the expected language. And we need to actually once we get to that point, we actually need to get to the point where the average consumers are literally doing that. They're just going out, buying something, plugging it in on a Friday night at 7 p.m. and enjoying a movie from that device at 7:10 p.m. It's very important that we get to that point, and when we do, that's when the mass market will really have taken off. Okay. That's a test of when the market will have taken off. The next step is really content accessibility. DRM is essential, and we're at Digital Hollywood, and I've made this statement at previous Digital Hollywood sessions. There has to be a business for commercial content, or else all of the other things we're talking about are not really relevant. So not only must consumers be able to connect their devices, but the content that they purchase. The consumer shouldn't have to make a choice about where they purchase their content. If there's a new website that somebody puts up that's selling content that consumers want that happens to be protected by some DRM system, consumers should be able to go and say, I want that content. And I happen to have a collection of devices in my home. But the natural tendency is for me to be able to purchase that content and use it on all the devices in the home. We have that now with the DVD. We need to reacquire that ability when we go to the internet download model, and we're not there yet. A couple of broken skies there also.
And Scott?
Yes,
you're actually raising a lot of great issues we want to cover on the panel, so maybe we can deal with those as we
okay, last point. Okay. So yeah, so it is incumbent on us, the multiple industries, including the content industry, to build an ecosystem of devices, content, and services that enrich the consumer's lives. And the cost and effort to access those services and that content has to pale in comparison to the benefits that are realized by that ecosystem.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that point up about affordability, because there's a great deal of things we heard about, just to reflect on some of the topics brought up by the panelists, which everyone agrees on ease of use. It needs to be easy. We need compelling content. That's very, very clear. No one's going to watch things they're not interested in or experience things they're not interested in. Scott and the rest of you guys talked about interoperable standards of some sort. Everything needs to work together. And the good news is that technology seems to be here. From a technology perspective, there's very few things that we want to do and that we can envision people doing that doesn't exist today, and that perhaps didn't exist even some years ago. And lastly, there's a lot of cool stuff brewing around. And so it seems like all the pieces of the puzzle are laid out before us. So from what if I've heard correctly from you all. And Scott, that point on affordability, I think, ties it up very nicely, because people need to be able to pay for this stuff too. If you think about what's in your home, what is in your home? What's in my home or all of our homes? Well, you have your TV, and we have a cathode ray tube TV, but no, now you're going to need to get a flat panel TV, or at least a flat monitor TV, because it's cool and it looks better, and a high definition TV. And amazingly, and thanks to Sony has been a huge driver of this, as well as others, people actually are buying these things in the millions. Hundreds of dollars, even thousands of dollars at a time. So you need your TV, a nice TV. It's become a status symbol again. It was in the 50s, and then it became commoditized, and now it's people judge you by the way your TV looks, not how it appears when it's on, but really how it looks in your living room. You need your DVD player, and it sounds like there's Blu-ray or HD TV coming along, so we're going to need to upgrade all of those kinds of things. You need a PC. Of course, that PC needs broadband connectivity, DSL or cable or some other means. You need cable or a dish network to be able to get through, and it'd be a gas to try to watch that stuff without a DVR or a TiVo type of experience of some sort. You need an iPod or another MP3 player to listen to your music. You need some sort of a satellite radio, either in your car or in your home, because you want to listen to Howard Stern and you can't listen to him on the regular airwaves these days. So how does all this stuff come together? Each one of those devices, if you think about them, the PC perhaps being different, but each one of those devices is potentially a different, non-interoperable with everything else that's in your home. So how do you actually bring these things together? Let's talk about convergence a little bit. But when we talk about convergence, because I think we've all touched on what convergence is and what it can look like. But if you guys can focus on, and ladies can focus on, what is going to drive convergence? how are we actually going to get there? What is it going to be a consumer is going to say, I want this and I'll pay for it, and I'm going to hire the Geek Squad from Best Buy to go and install this and tie it all together? Is it that desirable the consumer's just going to pay through the nose for it? Is it going to be a technology solution, or is the industry going to come together and align with standards? Is everything just going to work together? You just turn it on and it all works nicely? What's actually going to drive this? And I don't know if anyone has if this is a burning issue for anyone in particular. Udo, you and I spoke about this just before, so perhaps you could start us off.
Well, again, we believe at Nero, we believe it's all about standards, and we believe the industry is going to eventually go and establish or work with certain standards. We see it for the next generation HD, DVD, and Blu-ray, for example, where we have mandatory video codecs. You don't see any proprietary codecs in there. They're all open standards. It's MPEG-2, it's AVC for MPEG-4, and it's VC1 from Microsoft. Those are all codecs. If people all use those codecs, that already goes a long way. But we really believe that that's the only way to go. The other thing that Scott mentioned, obviously, is the DRMs and the Corals and the DLNAs of the world. These bodies that are working on technology solutions that essentially enable you to go to one store and buy something and also play it back on the device that you've also registered at another store. So that's a big challenge that we're all facing, and as long as we stick to standards and interoperability rules, I think that's what we can achieve that. But it is an uphill battle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, please.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, Sony is a big company with a lot of market presence, and yet we're focusing on the open standards platform approach. And I think it's safe to say that an open standards platform creates opportunities for all comers. So, for example, small companies can get on that platform and create value propositions, and that form of innovation is essential for a healthy ecosystem. Having a single company sort of dominate what a platform, if you will, tends to limit the innovation that's so critical to healthy evolution of technology.
And Claudia mentioned earlier that Cisco is considering, and I read a quote from the CEO a week ago where he said the network is the platform. Mm-hmm. Now, assuming that platform is based on codecs that everybody can use, that are open, that are not confined to one company owning and licensing that codec, we can all work together nicely on that network.
I think ultimately what drives all of this, and that lovely list of devices that you mentioned, is only really interesting to me because it means a content experience. It's seeing the Olympics or FIFA soccer in magnificent HD. It's about having my music library wherever I go, being able to listen to as much talk radio as I want without commercials, what have you. And I think that's really the driver, are these breakthrough content experiences that get people really excited about these devices. And so they start with the content experience, and then they say, okay, this is the lifestyle I want, this is where I want to watch and listen to things. Now, how do I architect a system that gets me all of that content?
Okay.
I think we have real challenges in this area. I mean, if you look at it, there's the Microsoft DRM, Coral, whatever it might be, OMA, Open Mobile Alliance for mobile. I mean, it's going to be a long time before the standards really address all of these various devices and networks, in my opinion. Yeah. And I buy off on what Ron said, which is, if you have the content, something that's compelling and a way to go get it, and even if it means there's some transcription of the DRM technologies or whatever that may be, I think the consumers really don't care about the standards. They just care about getting the content on the devices. Sure. That they have, and it's a long time coming before these standards actually are implemented, in my opinion. So,
well, yeah, I hear that all the time about standards take a long time, and I am here to say that standards take a long time, actually a very long time.
Working a long time.
But we've been working a long time on it. I've announced many times that within 2 years we'll have interoperable networks. But the thing is that consumers do care about technology, not directly but indirectly, because when there's a platform based on standards that are accessible to companies both small and large, then the consumer benefits by having choice. If there is not such open and interoperable platforms that are accessible by all, then the consumers, when they go to the store, they have to make a choice, and that's very uncomfortable for them, and I think it really constrains the adoption of any product. They go to the store and they say, well, here's this one product, and this is based on a proprietary platform, and if you buy that, then you can buy this family of devices. But then if you go over to this side of the store and you buy these products, they're based in part on standards and in part on other things, but if you buy within that family, then you'll have interoperability. Actually, that would be a good scenario. We don't even have that right now. Right now we have network products. You go to the store, you don't know what ecosystem they belong to or what they might or might not work with. That's why standards are absolutely critically important. They take a long time. We've been at this a very long time. I think we're starting to see these platforms emerge and the standards being finalized.
Let me add a different flavor to this for just a second.
Please.
Let me up-level. I think that content providers will now have to do two things. One is their segmentation of the marketplace over time. Their time windows are going to shift from business model aspects. And they've got to start looking at, as they know well, that these devices provide different mediums and different experiences in where you are. Portable devices, from just pick on video, needs to be more of a video snacking mentality, and how do you deliver a video snacking so it's not just taking the same content and putting it on the device and expect consumers in that. You've got to kind of re-edit that and so that consumers can snack. And then second, I believe what's really going to drive this are new forms of media and video. If you watch video.google.com or you saw YouTube on CNN last night, there's a whole generation coming up that this generation frankly doesn't understand, and they're going to create compelling forms of entertainment that we're going to laugh at, and that's going to drive the marketplace, and we'll be left behind in terms of that content is for the most part going to be free.
So if I could look at it, it's actually quite interesting because even in terms of the layout of the panel, we're hearing about standards and we're hearing about content, and I think those are two of the key drivers. And so I actually want to pull things out of both of them. But let's just finishing up on standards. So we all violently agree on standards. Everyone, who doesn't want standards? I mean, anyone hates standards out there? Everyone loves standards. But have we fallen into the same trap again? There's the proverbial Betamax versus VHS wars of the late 70s and early 80s, which took about 5 years to work through. I don't know if anyone has Betamaxes out there in the audience. Every now and then you do find someone. But, and that played itself out in VHS when we know the story reasonably well, or very well. But are we about to do this type of thing again? And Scott, I'm sure you have a strong opinion on this, but we have Blu-ray and we have HD DVD.
Oh, that.
Yeah, that little thing. And is this? I understand that there are lots of very good commercial reasons from individual companies and even consortiums of companies that are driving these things forward, and the reason why we have this. We all know that the history of how we're here. But we're about to launch two competing standards for HD DVD. Is this good for consumers? I can't imagine it is good for consumers, but how are we going to get out of this? And Claudia, I don't know, or anyone have an opinion on this?
Anyone other than Scott, is that what
yeah,
you're saying?
because I have a sneaking suspicion that you're for Blu-ray, my guess.
I'm happy to make a comment.
Yeah, please.
A neutral comment.
Okay.
Actually, what we're talking about is, the interoperability of network devices. Fundamentally, you get your Blu-ray device or your HD DVD device. As long as they have a network connector on the back, then the content that you buy on your packaged media will go out on the network and can be consumed by other network devices. Yes, it's regrettable that there are two potential removable media formats. That's a fact, and it is regrettable. And yet, the companies, the backers of both sides of that, are sitting, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder in the DLNA, working on standards so that once the content gets on the network, it's all interoperable. Okay,
great. And now, Claudia, you said that Cisco's perspective is not clear, but sincerely, you want to see IP happen, and whoever wins is somewhat immaterial. So how do you think about the situation that's brewing?
We don't judge other people's conflicts.
Of course.
But we're looking at digital download, and then of course you want to capture that, and there seems to be a lot of resonance with consumers who still want to have packaged goods and DVDs, even if they have a digital download experience, they might want to have that DVD. We personally on our devices would likely adopt both standards. Probably it adds cost to the devices, but the consumer is going to decide, and these kind of conflicts arise all the time, and we get beyond them. And
So we'll
It's
grow
life.
out of them. We'll grow out of them.
It's like,
Yeah, I think if this one solves itself fairly quickly, here's my scenario. I think, a Samsung and others basically make multi-mode devices which will play either one. Consumers are going to buy that box, and then guess what? Walmart or Best Buy is going to tell the manufacturers, we really don't feel like stocking both formats. We're going to choose for you based on what consumers seem to be picking up faster. And I think it sorts itself out. And Intel doesn't really much care which one it is either.
But,
so.
but it is a question of cost that needs to be addressed. I think it's not cost efficient to do that right now at this point in time. And we at Nero, we have to support both formats, and we do, and we think they're both great technologies. But in essence, for us, it's we have two R&D teams that are engineering both formats. And we believe it's ultimately it'll be decided by install base on the PC. It'll be decided by the cost of the device. And at the end of the day, we'll see who wins. But
Okay.
great technologies, both of them.
Great. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about content. There's lots of really cool, soon-to-be, if not already, connected devices wherever you go. So what does this actually mean for content? Barry, you mentioned to us that you actually think that the next generation is actually going to be driving all kinds of cool, different content that we can't even imagine or would chuckle at or laugh at if we saw it. Do we think, broadly speaking, that people, all of us, not just the YouTubers, are going to consume more content? In other words, is it going to be, with the explosion and proliferation of devices and all the kinds of things, are we just going to watch more stuff? Or are we going to shift where we watch it and how we watch it and what we watch? How do you think it plays out? And so Barry, we can...
Sure. Well, I think it's going to be generational. I think for our generation, a lot of it is, I missed this TV show or that event, or I like to watch this, so ultimately it'll all be digitized, and we can talk about the many ways you get to it, but any place, anywhere, any device, any time, you can watch what you want. I think we're all driving to that. This is all the details to make that happen, and performance in many dimensions is going to be critical to that. If you can't get to it to get started, it takes you 30 seconds and you lose the value proposition quickly. So performance and networks are going to be a key attribute of that. Second, if you look at our kids and what they're doing, if you look at their cellular bill, it isn't the voice side you're paying for, it's the data side. They don't actually use the voice side. Now, if I disabled voice in your cell phone, you would do me bodily harm. If I disable voice in a cell phone for your teenager, they won't notice it. Right? Okay? They have a different value proposition, so we need to understand that they're going to be the early adopters of technology, and that we got to understand their value propositions because they're different than ours. And so therefore our gut instincts are by definition wrong. We deliberately, from a user demographic in the team that I have in Motorola, so I speak for the small team we've got, besides who's going to buy it, we target the family manager, most typically the wife, and the teen girls, because they are behavior-wise the sharers by nature. We call the wife the family manager. We call the husband the technical manager. When's the last time you technical managers called your wife for tech support? Right? Doesn't happen. Those are generic statements. So you got to design for people who are sharing. Why is that? Word of mouth is the most powerful marketing message, and if they start sharing, other people adopt. And you got to really look at that adoption taking place. And it's that cool factor, and then you see this and can you do that, and communities get built. That's why things like myspace.com. Lastly, real quickly, I was in a focus group, and they were talking about, this problem solves itself because the generation will come up and adopt this technology, but we got to make sure that it really is, again, easy to use. And we give that lip service. We actually say that's a given, but I don't see people actually making the investments in corporations to make things actually easy to use. Instead, we bifurcate them and split the development. If instead of developing for both, you had the same engineering team, but half the team was spent on making it easier to use, we'd all win.
Right.
So to the question, do we watch and enjoy more content or less content? I think what happens when these technologies are out there and they're done right is that what people do is optimize their viewing. So with time shifting and place shifting, I can be a lot smarter and more in control about what I watch. And I probably watch and enjoy as much or maybe a little bit more content than I did in the past, because I'm not spending time watching stuff I'm not really interested in. So it's a much more meaningful experience, and I think net, I'm more apt to turn on the TV or my satellite radio or something like that. So I think in general, I think the pie gets bigger for content, but also the mix changes where it's, you know, what people think of as premium content and user-generated content, and yourself as a content creator. I think that all enters the mix. So it's not what we've been used to historically.
Okay. And Scott, perhaps you from Entric, if you could talk perhaps on this topic, but give us a perspective on the business models that may emerge, because perhaps the advertising based or supported, are we going to be premium service paying for these types of things? Is advertising going to change? How do you view the way that this is actually all going to be funded?
Which Scott?
Oh, this Scott first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we can go.
So just to touch on the opening statement. So if you look at the content, there's a lot of choices that are going to come available to you in the near future, and you know, I really my thoughts is that right now you've got this closed garden approach, and you get what they give you. That they being the cable providers or satellite providers, and you know, really the home viewing experience. Most people, you know, they watch certain shows, and you know, you've got 200 channels, but you watch 3 or 4 or 5 channels. That's about it. I mean, there's, you know, you never watch everything that's out there. And I think that, you know, everybody in their personal lives are very, very busy, and you know, you just have so much viewing time for that. I do believe that, you know, with the what I call internet TV, or is termed internet TV, which is really the open garden type of approach, where, you know, anybody can now publish this niche content, and now with some of the new devices and initiatives that are going on, consume that content either at home or on the go, whether you're, you know, on a mobile phone or a portable device. I think that those downtime experiences will increase. So, you know, now I can, you know, I've got a bus ride, or I'm, you know, waiting on a plane. Now I can, you know, consume more content. So yes, you know, there is that. Now, from a business model perspective, I mean, you know, we really started off our business looking at pay media. And, you know, pay is very important. You've got subscription models, you know, active user models, pay-per-view, all of these different things. But I think that, you know, what we're really starting to see is that the ad-supported model is something that's becoming very, very relevant. And, you know, I'd say that, you know, most people, and I think a recent survey was 68% of the people would rather watch content and watch the ad than actually pay for that content. So, you know, we've been programmed for years through television to watch ads. It doesn't go away easily, right? And and nobody really wants to pay. I mean, you know, there's people that, you know, there's some events, sporting events, concerts, things like that you'll pay for and you'll actually, you know, consume. But I do believe that one of the bigger models that's out there, and these deep libraries that are just sitting on the shelf right now, will start to actually be, you know, brought out and consumed by us, you know, in more of an ad-supported model. So, you know, that's what I see as far as, you know, something that's really relevant today. I mean, if you look at March Madness, CBS Sportsline, the whole NCAA thing, I mean, that was completely ad-supported, and you know, last year it was all pay. I think they did better this year because more people tuned in and watched, and you know, I think their revenue was significantly higher over the last few months versus last year. So,
if I could build on that, and I too have a library. I have a TiVo, and I tell my TiVo what I want to watch. And except for the evening news, everything is basically on demand through my TiVo. And I think that will continue. If I could, for example, just purchase the season passes that I actually do want to watch, and leave all the rest on the shelf for me to purchase if I choose in the future, then I may end up spending less per month on my content bill, and yet the people providing the content that I'm interested in will get a bigger share of that. And I think I think that's sort of a theme that's emerging out of this discussion. But I think one thing that's very positive to note is that what we're talking about is delivering to the consumers what the consumers want.
right.
And that's sort of a new, well, it's something that's now possible more than it ever was before. And I think what that says to me is that it's really the sweet spot. When we effectively introduce to consumers what they want, then, you know, broad scale adoption will follow naturally. And I'm very optimistic about that trend.
One, I think, example of that, and what you're also seeing happen, is the evolution of new formats for media. So you take the business model for broadcasting a 2-hour football game, now you have the advent of delivering to a consumer, a very hungry audience, a 20-minute version of that game, waiting for them on Monday morning with high-quality video, with maybe some ads, or maybe they paid for it, or maybe you give them that choice. And I think that really starts to, as I said, optimize the viewing experience, and I think grow the pie and ultimately give consumers what they want in a way they haven't been able to experience historically.
Okay. How do we think about mobile and wireless? We can imagine wireless in the home, connecting things. How do we think about mobile? And we can perhaps start with you, Barry, and Claudia, you as well next. How do we think content is going to be consumed on a mobile device? We know the proverbial teenagers, or our actual teenagers, text all the time and consume, and there's just obviously networks being built, 3G networks and even 4G networks being planned. They're going to enable all kinds of data to devices, and cell phones, but also all kinds of other devices. So how do we think mobile is going to play a role in this ecosystem?
Well, from an industry standpoint, mobile is going to be huge. You can divide that in two pieces. Obviously, cellular devices, which you carry with you, and other portable devices, a portable PlayStation from Sony, an iPod from Apple. And contrary to what everybody thinks, these little microprocessors inside the devices are already overly taxed. So Intel here has got a great future going forth. You take for granted the seamlessness of the phone in the past, converting from analog to digital and going different modes and that stuff. But that's an example of a user experience being hidden from you so that you don't have to know about those things taking place. I think as you see what's going to evolve with especially cellular devices, they're going to get smaller, thinner, and therefore much easier for you to ubiquitously carry this wherever you go. And then new devices, we have the Q here, which is Verizon's bringing out this spring. You can see how small the thinness of this is. It's got a widescreen format. This is on a 3G EVDO network, so browsing experience is really high. What I'm more excited about personally is that this supports memory cards. And rather than just a USB connection, memory cards are in fact the quickest, fastest way to move content from one device to another. For those of you, this may be a term you never heard before called sneakernet. It's an old 60s, 70s term, meaning you took the old floppy disk. Remember floppy disks? Take the floppy disk out of one machine and you sneak it across to the other machine. I believe getting content, because it bypasses the walled gardens that some people put in these places, preventing you to get content on them. So I think what you're going to find is these type of new devices are going to give you a compelling video playback experience, and just again, it's a new medium and change the way that you now access content.
Claudia?
Well, it's just almost every single day you hear of a new content deal with a mobile phone operator.
Yes.
So it's an exciting area. I think that it just was rich because the billing system was there, and the model, which is a lot like the cable model, just took off. And it's a real great novelty to be able to carry around your content on your, to have video on your cell phone. Personal video, I think, is really exciting on a cell phone. I personally use that a lot. I'm not sure whether cell phones have really come into their own until it's really treated as its own medium and has its own content. It's fun to have video that's TV video on your phone, but really I think there'll be new content that's appropriate for the cell phone that will really be more exciting than what we have now. We do have a little bit of that, but that's where you'll see an explosion, is when it's treated as its, and in itself with its own type of content.
Okay.
And what I like from a business model standpoint, to make your point here, Claudia, is ringtones is a $4 billion business, and for a snippet of a song, you actually pay more. And because you're not buying them in bulk, you want 2 or 3, and you're willing for the convenience and that personalization. So Business model potentials here are enormous. We worry about the dark side. I talked about the clouds, the DRMs protecting this stuff. I think if we as an industry let loose of trying to overprotect things, we'd actually create a much larger pie. I go back to January 17th, 1984, to be specific, when the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Sony versus Hollywood. Hollywood lost that day. No, they actually won. At that time, the box office was a $5 billion industry. Today, it's a $9 billion industry 20 years later. Doesn't seem to grew that much. But if you add VHS and DVDs together, that's a $36 billion business that got created out of them losing that battle. For Hollywood, losing the DRM battle, letting go of that, will actually create more wealth than trying to hold tightly down to that. But that's just history. Again, January 17th, 1984.
Yeah.
So, from our point of view, you know, media-centric phones will not, on short term, replace, you know, PVRs and those kind of devices, because currently the offering isn't there yet. But we certainly see that that's something midterm that could be happening. I mean, you know, the Nokias and the Motorola's of the world are certainly working on doing that. We at Nero, we're also building mobile solutions, so we're making sure our PC-centric software also has a similar kind of experience on the phone. So we very strongly believe in that the mobile phone sector is very important for the future growth of content. Very important.
And if I can add a comment, I think that mobile really has two categories. One is the kind of content on the phone, and I agree that really deserves its own special content. And I think probably shorter form content, for instance, and content where image detail is not the point, but rather the story, the information is important. But at the same time, mobile content should also include sort of normal kinds of content, like movies, that are enjoyed in a mobile manner, such as on a PSB or a portable video player, or in your entertainment center in your car. So I think that traditional content will become mobile as well, and the network infrastructure to support that will be very important. It may or may not be 3G, but if it's 3G, it's probably an IP service over 3G by which you access a website or remotely to your home network to acquire your content.
Okay.
Well, one of the things I heard recently is how these new screens and new usage models is actually changing how content is created and how things are being shot. The head of NBC Television recently said, after watching one of his shows on an iPod, saying, you know, I'm going to shoot a lot more close-ups now because, you know, it's lost on the viewer when you're shooting for a wider frame. So I think that's going to be really exciting as well, because I think that'll be a subtle but meaningful change for consumers, so they actually maybe unnoticeably enjoy what they're watching more.
Okay.
There was an interesting caricature in Business Week, I think 2 weeks ago, where they showed a little cartoon where how content was consumed in the 60s, 80s, and 90s. In the 60s, it was a standard television. In the 90s, it was a big screen television, and in 2006, you saw a guy with an iPod. That's kind of
Indeed, very sound of the times. So before we turn the panel over to questions from the audience, I want to just see if, and perhaps Claudia, you can start us off with this. There's some really cool companies or services that are getting out there. You mentioned MovieBeam. In full disclosure, Mayfield is also an investor in MovieBeam, and Intel, of course. So that's something that we obviously all believe in. Claudia, what are some of the things, perhaps if MovieBeam is appropriate or any of the other, what services or companies are you seeing on the horizon that are dynamic, interesting, that you're excited about for the near to mid future, not way off in the horizon, but over the next few years?
I'm only going to talk about the ones that we've already identified publicly.
Okay, no problem.
Because for obvious reasons. But I will talk a little bit about MovieBeam. I think MovieBeam is an interesting service that I'm not sure if many of you have heard of it, but it was launched recently in the last couple months. It's a project that actually Disney incubated internally and rolled out this year with 6 investors. It's available in 29 metropolitan cities, and it's a set-top box that has a antenna on it, and it has ready when you purchase it 100 movies inside the box, and the idea is to replace the video store where you go and rent videos. It follows the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the video rentals are from 20% of the movies, and so you get Disney is experimenting with day and date videos there. The 10% are HD videos. And so it's an exciting platform, and we decided to invest in it because it's digital content and it gets the consumer used to consuming video in a different way, not through going to the video store and not through purchasing necessarily a DVD. So we were excited to invest in that. We're also investors in Cinema Now, which is a digital download service to the PC. We're interested in getting that content from the PC to the TV, and we're working with Cinema Now on ways to do that more efficiently. We have invested in Shanda, which is a Chinese online gaming company, and we chose to do that because we're really fascinated by China and what's going on there. And also, we think that gaming is really a new opportunity for online content and for the telcos. So we think it's something for us to invest in. There are just loads of great companies along the value chain that's being created by this new digital home. And we're trying to do our best to really encourage the ones that we think are the best, and to encourage a lot of them, because we'd like to see a lot of innovation take place in the home.
Okay. Great. Well, I want to turn it over to the audience. So questions for the group. Yes.
Going back to the discussion about open standards, so you asked, if anybody here hates open standards, I don't hate open standards. but I'm concerned about them for a couple of reasons. Number one, they do take a long time, and they're pluralistic by nature. There's an open standard for everything now, and they don't talk to each other, or they don't do it efficiently. 3GPP and 3GPP2 do largely the same thing, but they have very little in common.
Yes.
Also, second aspect of the same issue is that they don't seem to have too much intestinal fortitude to take stands on issues. Udo was talking about quotas, and I participate in GLNA multimedia format task force, and the only mandatory quota that we have is raw audio.
Mm-hmm.
PCM. That's everything else is optional, and becomes this huge bucket that everybody throws things into, and then poor guys like Udo have to have multiple development teams to make sure that it works with every one of those things in that bucket.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, we have people like Media Flow that come out and do something that DBBH has been trying to do for many, many, many years. Have something that's very reasonable and something that they can take to market in a very short period of time. And that's a proprietary solution. So I don't know if there are any comments on that.
Well, I naturally have a comment on that, if I may.
Please.
Yeah, surprisingly. First of all, I would have to say that industry consensus in a standards setting arena is the worst solution for the industries of all, except for every other alternative. Because the only other alternative to not getting together, paying the airfare, getting on airplanes, talking, the only alternative to that is for everybody to just do their own thing. And then the interoperability story is just completely out the window. You mentioned LPCM. That's a required format. And the whole model of format interoperability is that you have a set of required formats, so that if you find yourself connected on a network to a device that doesn't happen to implement the same optional format that you as a server have implemented, then you still have a means to get the content from you to the other device. And for audio, LPCM was chosen. For video, MPEG-2 was chosen. However, we're moving to AVC. AVC is now required for mobile devices, of course, and MPEG-2 is not required for mobile devices. And then we also have a plan to require AVC for all devices. So that gets into the notion of managing the evolution of technologies, which will be sort of an ongoing responsibility. So I still think that, and regarding standards, they actually don't take as long as they used to. And one of the reasons is, you would put up a standard, and everybody that had an opinion about a bus or an interface or something would flock to that and try and meld it into what their vision of such an interface should be. And then you would have battles that would go on for year after year after year. What I see happening more now is that, birds of a feather will come together with sort of a common set of requirements and objectives and form a working group either in IEEE or the 1394 Trade Association or ISO or what have you, and then actually very quickly ratify something. Now, what's missing in that is what's the role of that in the greater scheme of things. And that's where DLNA is trying to fill the void, because DLNA is actually precluded from creating technologies ourselves. The bylaws preclude us from creating technologies or taking ownership of technologies that are owned by a standard-setting body. Instead, the DLNA creates guidelines that refer to existing established industry standards and describe how those standards can be used so that we achieve interoperability. So I think I think as an industry, as multiple industries, we're getting better at standards, and we're understanding that interoperability is the goal, not creating some new, whizzy, gigabit, serial, whatever, and then promoting the heck out of it and hoping you get a bigger market share. I think that the mindset has really fundamentally changed for the better now.
Yeah, let me just briefly just add one thing to this. Motorola is part of DLNA, so we're huge supporters, but I think if we all are looking at this with sober eyes, the real standards that work are where 2 or 3 companies set them with an open set of architecture, not setting a standard, but an open architecture that creates some de facto standard, if you will. Everybody hops on that bandwagon. A huge ecosystem happens. We're not doing that time. We've got the thing we've really been talking about is big consortiums of hundreds of companies participating. On the other side, we don't talk about it, but Apple is slowly, with a proprietary system, history may be different this time, creating a closed, compelling experience. And if the industry doesn't catch up with that, by default, they will win, and therefore there'll be only one DRM that matters, and that's Steve's.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question about simplicity and content management. Having been in this space for a little while, just a couple of statistics. By 2010, there'll be 100 million of Generation C. By 2007, 70% of households will have media PCs. Digital pictures will be 70% of all cameras or pictures taken by next year. Music downloads will be about $1 billion by the end of next year. So as a consumer, I'm now going to be humbled by all these devices that I'm in, all this content that I can buy, acquire, stream, and create. Across all of your devices, how do I manage that? And what are your thoughts for managing all that? So I used to have this shoebox of pictures, which I never organized. Now I've moved that to my computer, which I never organized. And now it's all over my email, Snapfish. And then I've got my iTunes and my, Windows Media and my all this. How does the consumer manage all this stuff?
Yeah, let me come to that real quickly. I don't think you as a consumer really want to manage it. What you want to do is just let it exist and just do what it does. And then you quickly want to easily find it when you want to find it. And so we don't want to put management tools on you so you spend time managing it. But, think, a Yahoo or Google search engine now is you as a consumer helping you find that quickly.
Udo?
I believe there's good software solutions that can help you manage that, such as ours being one, obviously. But at the same time, I understand your dilemma, and it's, that's why we, again, we're repeating ourselves, we again believe in open standards, interoperability, because if that is the basis for that software solution, then you will be ultimately, and that's the goal that we all work on, ultimately able to take content A, take content C, and play it back on device A, B, C, D, E. And you need a manager for that, and we believe we believe at least it's software based.
Okay.
Yeah, I would, if I can add a quick comment. Okay, go ahead.
Let this, a couple more questions.
Next question.
Yes.
There's been a lot of talk about standards and giving consumers choice and giving them a lot of options. But one of the problems as a consumer myself is that when you have a lot of choices, there's a lot of confusion, which was also touched on in the panel. The question, I guess, across the panel, and whoever wants to answer it, when you talk about innovation, how do you blend the pace of innovation that companies like yours are all putting forward with the need for educating the public and helping them adopt these things, and how do you go about with that education process?
And Scott Crowder, do you want to try, given your role here?
The thing that I was listening to your question, I was thinking, you know, how are you going to educate people? I mean, you shouldn't have to educate people. It should just be stupid simple for them to actually use this stuff. I mean, you can't, you know, nobody's going to read a book. There's not a manual. I mean, it needs to be that simple to where they just plug it in and it works. And you know, that's, if we don't develop in that mindset, then, you know, this industry won't take off. I mean, it's something that you know, it's just too challenging. I mean, nobody reads the manual, nobody reads the documentation right now.
Basic functionality needs to be a given that everybody can use, and everything beyond that, people will have to pick up the manual. But I agree with Scott. The basic functionalities have to be easy to understand.
That's
easy to use.
Right. Thank
It's easy
you.
to use, yeah.
That's right.
I think
There
this
may
is where,
be a school.
I think
We don't
there's
know.
a role, sign me up. I think this is where there might be a role for some of the walled gardens. You know, you look at AOL, and what AOL did that was amazing was really turn a whole generation onto the internet and made it safe and easy for them. And over time, that evolved to the point where it didn't make sense, and it became part of the overall internet. And I think that's where things like cable VOD is a great way to teach people about this on-demand experience and how to navigate a UI and how to, you know, push purchase. And I think people are going to start on training wheels to some degree, and then they're going to evolve to more and more complex ways of consuming content. So, you know, as the standards efforts are happening and as this ecosystem is building out, people are, I think, coming up the learning curve, and they're being taught by their teenage sons and daughters, you know, how to ultimately make it all work.
Yeah.
Last question. Yes.
I'm interested in the conflict of interest issues between consumers and the phone and the technology companies. For example, after you, Mr. Crowder, you were talking about, you know, that you're tending toward an advertiser-supported model. Okay, now you can fast forward through commercials on your TV. At some point, you're going to be able to fast forward through your commercials on the cell phone. In addition to which, Mr. Folsom, it is my feeling as a lawyer that once I buy a song on iPod or download it to my computer, I should be able to download it to my cell phone as a fair use. The phone company should not be able to dictate that then there is a technology that prevents me as a consumer from downloading it to my cell phone. And my major question to Mr. Smyers is, Sony, I think, has a tremendous conflict of interest between being a technology and a content company. Every time I have tried to make a pitch for content distribution to Sony, that idea has been taken by the technology people. And I want to understand how you deal with it internally. So those are my 3 comments.
How much time do we have?
Yeah. We only have a couple minutes, so maybe just a
3
brief
minutes.
responses.
3 minutes. Oh, okay. Should I start with that since I was the neighbor?
Sure. Why don't you? Yeah. Please.
Well, one of the things is I like your comment about, you know, if I buy my content through a service provider, they should not have the ability or the right to tell me on what devices I play that content. In fact, the French government has weighed in on that question as well, and that's why I think that the world is not going to accommodate, you know, because was labeled, you know, Steve's DRM. I don't think the world will settle there. I think instead what we're going to find is DRM interoperability. Technologies by which content that's protected in one system can be moved to devices that implement other technologies. I think that's the way things are going to naturally go, and I think it's an important trend. But for Sony, so you try to make a pitch to the content guys about service and it's picked up by the technology guys?
Yeah.
And how do we deal with that internally?
Yeah, because you're supporting, you know, developing the great technology and everything else, and on what, and you've just been cited for antitrust and everything that goes with it. But what I'm saying is how you are dealing when as being both a content company, protecting your own content internally, okay, and then trying to, you know, develop your own technology for interoperability. There is an innate conflict there.
Well, I don't see it that way. We do have some internal groups that meet. Well, why don't we take that offline?
Yeah, we'll take it offline. And the next. Was there any last questions or?
Very quickly.
Yeah, please.
Very quick, I promise.
Okay.
I can buy a $100 DVD player. Is there anything about the HD or Blu-ray technology that would preclude me from buying a $100 HD or Blu-ray player at some point? Is it too complicated to do that, or will that be part of the process?
Of course not.
Yeah.
No.
Cheap. So to sum up, we have we have an exciting, affordable future with connected consumers enjoying media where they want, when they want, how they want. And it's a brave new world. Thank you very much. I will do that.